Alright, so I made a quick change here. I'm actually going to continue with this video because we need to cover what's in the book still. So I'm just going to go ahead and minimize this and open up the book here. Now, in case the book is blurry on the screen here, just follow along in your actual book. I'll tell you what page I'm on. I'm on page 8 at the very bottom here. Okay. So he's just going to explain CSS syntax, which we just covered in this last segment here. And I'm just going to go ahead and kind of take you through some of the points I want you guys to make sure you understand. So again, he has his selectors with the curly brackets and the rules in between, which is what we did. And he says the following is a design pattern for a rule. Don't get caught up on the word pattern. That's his fancy word for structure. So this is the structure of how to write CSS, basically. All right. And he has it here, property, colon, value, semicolon, right? And that's exactly what we just did with the h1 tag in the previous segment there. So all that should look familiar at this point. And you can keep reading through the bottom of page 8 there, just for some of his examples. Alright, so I'm going to move forward here to page 9, give the video a chance to catch up here. And just, he's got some more information on CSS syntax. I'm going to cover some of the points I need to make sure you guys understand. CSS code should be lowercase. Selectors are case sensitive when referencing elements, so be sure you got that down. Element names, classes, and IDs are restricted to letters, numbers, and underscores. Alright, so that's important. Oh, and hyphens as well. Alright, so we'll keep scrolling down. Multiple classes. Multiple classes can be assigned to an element by separating the classes with a space. We haven't done that yet. So I'm going to give the video a chance here to catch up. I must have said something else originally. But you would just separate them with a space. We haven't had a chance to use that yet, but more likely than not we will later on. But just good information for you. Alright, constant values should be placed in quotes. Those are keywords. Constant values that he's naming, those are keywords. For example, we use the color blue, and we didn't use quotes around the color blue. If you did, it would be invalid. There is a time and place for those, and we'll talk about that. Strings and backslashes we don't use very often, but strings are a place where we would use quotes, and they may be used when you have a font name with multiple words in it, not just Verdana and Arial, but a font that actually has more than one word. You can use spaces as long as they're wrapped in quotes. So he's got some examples of that down here at the bottom. We'll rarely run into this issue, especially in this class, so you can read through that and just know that it's there, but not important to really understand at this point. Okay, semicolon should terminate each CSS rule, and the @import statement, which we haven't talked about yet. So yes, we knew that semicolon ends a declaration, and then the curly braces make up a rule set. We use the word declaration block. He uses rule set because it's part of a rule. You're going to hear both terms more likely than not, and they're both valid. So next page, page 10, curly braces immediately terminate properties, so we knew that. Then he has some information here on how to write a CSS comment, and it looks like he has some nested comments inside of each other, so you guys can read through that in case you ever have the need for it. But we talked about comments. Next is white space. Now, white space, he's got a few examples here of how you can write the exact same rule a few different ways, right? So all of these are valid. I tend to prefer what's here at the bottom, but even the one I write slightly different. I have that first opening curly brace on the same line as the selector. Now, that's perfectly fine. In fact, that's the way Dreamweaver writes them, so I think that's how I got used to them. He likes to write them, he has an example of how he likes to write them, all on one line with spaces between the curly braces and the property. The problem with that is, imagine having 10 properties and 10 values on a line that looks like this up at the top. It becomes really hard to read and pick out which parts of those you want to change. So that's the style he goes with here, and I'm not too fond of that. So, I mean, it's up to you which style you really want to use here, but just be consistent and use a style that works for you. I like something more like this, but again, up to you how you want to write those. All right, so I'm gonna let the video catch up here for a second. Looks like I was talking a little more last time when I originally recorded, but we're gonna move on to the next page here in a second. All right, using property values. So here he explains just some property values and how they're used. There's no need to memorize these yet. We're going to be using a lot of different property values along the way, and he's got another page of them here, and we'll learn them as we go along. So you can read through those if you want. They're there for a reference. All right. This page here, he has a link to an external style sheet, and then what is known as an embedded style sheet. So here's your first look at an embedded style sheet, right? All on the same HTML page. An embedded style sheet is not the preferred method for us, because if you were to use an embedded style sheet and you were to use that same style on all of your pages, you would then have to go and change that style sheet on all of your pages in case you wanted to make a change to your styles. So it pretty much negates the reason we use an external style sheet. Right? The reason we use an external style sheet is to make the change in one spot, and that propagates to all of the HTML documents. Right? So the embedded style sheet is good for, and he mentioned it earlier, was if you have a style that applies to just the page you're on now, that you can go and edit and only change that one page. That way you don't take up time loading an external style sheet for a style that only needs to be used once. So that's up to you. Another way of writing a CSS style, and probably the one that is least used, is this inline style. So here you go, style equals font style italic for the word easy. This is the least used, and again for the same reasons as the embedded, where if you were to actually apply this style everywhere you needed it in a page, when you needed to go change it, you would then have to go change it a bunch of times. So not the most ideal way of doing things. If you really did want to use this, it would be to test things. If you wanted to test what something looked like by changing a quick color or font size or something, you could use it and then just delete it if once you find the style you like, and then just add it to your external style sheet once you find something you like. So it's good for testing certain things out, but that's probably your only use for it. There's not many cases where you're going to need to do an internal or inline style sheet. Next, he gets into cascading order and what takes priority over what in the order. I'll probably make a separate video for cascade order, but let's go back real quick and I'll give you a quick overview of it. So we have three different styles here, right? Embedded, inline, and external. If I had the exact same property listed in all three of these, okay, for example, maybe this background color, as soon as my mouse catches up to my voice here, the background color RGB 100%, 100%, 100%, this guy here, if he was listed here and he was also listed in my external style sheet, the embedded style sheet would override the external style sheet. Okay, so if I were to change the values here, whatever I changed this 100%, 100% to would supersede whatever was in this external style sheet. Okay, there's an order. The way I like to think of it is the closer you are to the content is probably the one that's going to override it. So in this case, the embedded is closer to our content than the external, so it's going to override the external style sheet. Now our inline style sheet is going to override the other two. Okay, so if I were to have that same background color in the body tag of my HTML, the inline would override the other two. Now, don't get too caught up in the cascade order just yet. I will probably make a short video about cascading, and I'll just separate it out and do a separate example showing you how things override each other. We're not going to run into too many issues with this because we're not going to have embedded and inline and multiple style sheets for this class unless you absolutely need it. And even when you do have multiple style sheets, it's rare that you have the same properties listed twice. So we'll continue. And he just has some more information on classes and IDs and what overrides what in those cases. Again, we probably won't run into these. I don't think I've ever created properties and values that have overridden each other. If you write clean CSS that's simple and easy to work with, you will rarely run into these issues. But it's good to understand in case something happens that you didn't expect. It may be that you overrode something in the cascading order. Alright, so he has some more examples there. Simplifying the cascade. Simply put, this is how he writes his CSS. So he starts with universal selectors, and then elements, and classes, and attributes, and then finally his ID selectors, because as he goes down the list, the further down that he goes, those override the previous ones. If you read the previous pages, this is what he means. Okay. Now I write mine a little bit differently than this. I like to separate mine out in the order that they appear in the HTML. So when I start writing CSS, you'll notice that I will write the CSS that's for the entire page first, and then the CSS that's for my header, and then the CSS that's for my nav, and then the CSS that's for my main content. Basically, it's whatever makes sense to you. Writing it that way makes sense to me, so I don't like using this method here. Maybe this method is better. I'm not sure. I've never tried it. But again, it is up to you. Okay. So the next pages, he has just some references here. List of properties. All right. In case you don't know any CSS properties, you can start looking at these. Common values that are used for those properties. All right. We're going to go through these, learning most of these as we make our website. So no need to memorize these at all. Alright, and I'm just going to continue through these pages here, see what else. He's got units of measurement, just some examples of those. We'll talk about measurements in later videos, so no need to worry about that yet. Troubleshooting your CSS in case you run into issues, which we haven't, so let's continue. Normalized style sheet, we'll talk about that at a later time as well. So that's it for chapter 1, I believe. Yep, there's chapter 2. So I'll end it there, and I'll see you guys in the next video.